following is a production of Shark Flight Media. Shark Flight Media. Shark Flight Media. Shark Flight Media.
Now entering the nexus of geekery and guy world in 3, 2, 1. Mark.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
This is the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast.
Hey kids, welcome back for another exciting edition of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. I am your host, Ian J. Malone. Going to be joined here in just a couple of minutes by my usual partners in crime, Rob Howell, Kevin Steverson. Also got a fantastic guest on tap for you guys tonight. Note the use of the word on tap. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. What's going on there? First, before we do that, though, got to thank our presenting sponsor. That would, of course, be Chris Kennedy Publishing. Doesn't matter what you're into, folks. If it's military, sci-fi, space opera, paranormal romance, urban fantasy, high fantasy, even stuff about the craft. If you fancy yourself about a writer, they cover all genres and then some over at Chris Kennedy Publishing. If you want to know more about them, their books, their series, of course, go to the interwebs at chriskennedypublishing.com. You can also follow them on social media. They are very active on Facebook with their publishing page, and then obviously their groups, the CKP, the Factory Floor, and the 4HU, the Mert Guild. And you can follow Chris and the gang on Twitter as well as ourselves. If you want to know more about the show, just follow Shark Flight Media. We're on Facebook, Twitter. You can also email the show at dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com if you have questions. Alrighty. Whoa, Kevin. Kevin, are you with me there, sir?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. It sounds like you're fighting with a wildebeest or something there to get control of your microphone.
That sucker tipped right over. I got it now.
The Great Wildebeest Adventures of Ot 21.
Right?
That's what happened. I'm within 30 minutes of Athens, and Georgia defense is just permeates out.
Jeez, Bendiz,
And,
man. We're not even 5 minutes into the show, and you're already on to the freaking dogs, man. Come on.
What's wrong? Hey, look. Okay, listen. They need to work a little bit on their defense. They are allowing 4.6 points a game, but we're working on that.
My man bringing the research to tonight's episode of the Dudes in Hyperspace, presented by Chris Kennedy Publishing. Rob, how's life out in Kansas, man?
Well, I will say it's an exciting night for me because tonight at midnight, Talons and Talismans, the first one of the 2 anthologies, goes live. And I've had some great reviews from the advanced reviewers so far. I'm really excited about what we did here. It's got Kevin J. Anderson, Rick Parlow, Dave Butler, a cast of 15, actually, including Kevin Steverson himself. And I'm pretty proud about what we did. And so I'm excited that at midnight it goes live.
Nice. Well, just for our listeners, so you know, if you look right there in your show notes, you'll see a hyperlink on Talons and Talismans right there at the top. Just click on that. It'll take you straight to the Amazon page where you can go buy yourself a copy and read them their stories. Well, among the other things that we like to talk about on this show, and really have since its inception, would be the subject of beer, cervezas, sarsaparillas, as it were. And we've certainly heard enough of that talk from us. We've been round robin on what we like, whether it's myself and these guys, Rob and Kevin, or the previous hosts on this show with Scott and Dave. You know, beer has been a subject that we like to talk a lot about. We also like to talk a lot about small business on this show, whether it's writers and publishers, whether it's people who just get out in the community and find their own niche with art or service or otherwise. We're big fans of small business and the grinders and the fighters, the people who go out and make it happen. So it's only fitting that we bring ourselves on a professional in both areas tonight. And that would, of course, be a good fella here in the community, Mr. Tim Whaler. Folks around Panama City, Florida know him as the head brewmaster over at History Brewing on East 4th, and he is also one of the co-owners of History Brewing Company. So, Tim, welcome to the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast, man. We appreciate you coming aboard.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's go ahead and get straight into this, man. How did you, Tim Whaler, get into making beer? I mean, did the light just go off one day that, you know what, I see people doing this in their garage. I want to tinker with that myself. How did that come to happen for you personally?
Well, I think at its earliest point, my grandpa actually made beer and wine. So
okay.
I guess I knew it was possible. And so as I was working my 9-to-5 struggle fest job in Tampa and enjoying craft beer as an escape from that, I had wanted to make beer. So when we moved back to Panama City, as most people from Bay County do, they moved back after they realized the rest of the world out there isn't as great as you thought it might have been. And so as soon as we moved back, my wife bought me a Mr. Beer kit. And it's, you know, the beer kit you can buy standing in line at J.C. Penney. But that was it. I was off to the races. It escalated quickly and got out of control pretty fast. My obsession with making and crafting beer.
Nice. So now, how long ago was this that the great purchase at J.C. Penney happened for you?
This was 2011. So,
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So been at this a good decade now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a decade-long obsession with brewing, and you know, most home brewers all want to open a brewery. It's like once you figure out you can make beverages that your friends may be lying to you that they're like, oh, this is really good, you should think about making it. So deep down they're all thinking that, can I do this for, as a profession? So
Yeah. Well, that actually segues nicely into the next question I had for you, which was, it's one thing to be a novice and a guy that hangs out at home making Schrader Brow. All right, Breaking Bad reference there. But it's a whole nother thing when you decide we're gonna go the professional route. I want to do this for other people, and I want to take it to market. So when did the light go off for you that you wanted to do this for a living?
Well, I think really it stems from the relationship I have with my business partner and where we were in terms of professions. I'm an urban planner. That's my crafted trade from school and how I make a living. And so my business partner was buying up some buildings downtown, and we both had a desire to see downtown Panama City be what it could be and what everybody really wanted it to be. And so we knew that a good catalyst project was needed, and I mean, what's a better, redevelopment project than opening a brewery and hopefully kickstarting some kind of momentum in the area to get things going. So that's
Sure.
really, it's a combination of my urban planning and love of craft beer and brewing. So.
Sure. Well, that actually raises a completely different thing. I think, listen, I was just over at history class, not this past Friday, but the Friday night before for all of the Oktoberfest stuff with some friends. That was my first time going into the place. You and I were talking off air before we started the show. I just moved down here about a month ago from Raleigh, North Carolina, but I'm a native of Tallahassee, so I had tons of history with the Panama City area from college and even dating back into high school with friends who came over to Florida State from here. It's what struck me so much about history class when I walked through the door was not just the quality of the beer, which was outstanding. You guys have a great variety on there. Everything you could possibly want, from your a la kind of light beer for those of us who prefer that sort of a beer, all the way up to some really quality stout stuff. But really what struck me about it was the theme itself, history class brewing. When you walk into this place, people, if you ever wanted to know about Bay County and where it came from, this is where you go to find it. That is not lip service. It's all over the place. It's in the pictures and the decor on the wall. It's on the stuff that you read in the brochures. These guys really went all out to make something that is not only great quality beer, but by Bay County, of Bay County, for Bay County. And, we'll get to just how much that was needed after Michael here in a minute. But my question is this, what was it about that concept that really brought you guys in? How did that come to be? Because it's really authentic and it's really unique, and I dig it.
Well, I think our goal was to make this the community's meeting place. And so really, we definitely are a brewery and take pride in the beer, but the idea was always to have the beer be able to get out of the way and let the community celebrate the community. And that's why we have the history there, because a lot of the stories people don't know about their community. And once you start to know more about something, you start to take a little bit of pride in it. And it's definitely that was the goal, is to let people know that this is their brewery. This is your space where you can come with your friends, family, kids, dogs. I mean, we try to make it really reflect what the community wants in that, what we call in the planning world, which is like a third space, which is somewhere where you can go and just hang out, and you don't have to be shopping, you don't have to be doing anything other than just hanging out, having a good beverage, eating some good food, and enjoying the community.
Yeah. Well, I touched upon this just a second ago. That is all fine and good for any community at any time. I mean, that is a winning formula for business, much less a pub, anywhere in the United States of America or the world for that matter. It's a completely different ordeal when that is the goal of what you want your business to be after something like Hurricane Michael. And, for folks who are listening to this podcast who aren't from Florida, we got, tons of people who listen to us up in the Carolinas and Virginia, and even out into the Midwest where Rob is at. Folks, you can't understand the devastation that was a Cat 5 hurricane straight to the jaw until you see what it did to this area. Just for perspective, I heard a stat the other day that Hurricane Irma, when it rolled through Florida in 2017, dropped 2.5 million cubic feet of debris on 50 different cities in the Sunshine State. Michael dropped 4 million cubic feet of debris on Panama City. So, before they could get up and running with even thinking about repairing businesses and starting to put their community back together, they had to spend $100 million just on cleanup alone before the first nail could go into a board to put a building back together. Once that finally started, though, history class was very much at the forefront of that movement. And you guys continue to do that today, whether it's, event promotions that you do, partnerships that you do with the Bay County Public Library to promote library card sign-up day, whether it's the stuff that you do with the local pet adoption agencies and the animal folks. Who's driving that? And just speak to listeners about why it is that much of a priority for you guys to be out there, to be involved, to not just be selling beer to the community and making money off of them, but to be an active contributor in the Bay County community.
Well, I think we feel like, it's our way of giving back, and because really we wouldn't be where we are today without the support of the community. So we have the Pouring Love campaign where we take 25 cents from every beer we sell for a month, and we give it to some, nonprofit that maybe doesn't have a dedicated funding source, so we can really support those community organizations, give back, and it just, it feels like the right thing to do. This is their brewery, so when we say we're giving the 25 cents per pint to the organization, it's actually the community doing it. We're just facilitating that transaction. So, it's really fun to see what, a little bit of impact we can kind of give to these organizations, let people know about them, and then, hopefully the community will support them like they're supporting us. That's really the goal.
Cool. Well, while we're on the subject of events, what do you guys got coming up here in the next couple of weeks that maybe folks could know about? We got a lot of listeners over in Tallahassee, so a trek over to Bay County for a Friday night is not out of the question.
Yeah, definitely. We actually have a concert on, I believe it's the 16th. I should know this, but I'm just the beer guy is what I always tell everybody. But October 16, we have Mofro, JJ Gray and Mofro are actually doing a concert here downtown, and we're sponsoring it. We've made a few beers and themed them after Mofro, so we're really gonna have a good time and have the community come out. Yeah, definitely Tallahassee is close enough to come over and sneak in an outdoor JJ Gray concert, so that'll be fun. There's always something going on. Our marketing team, it's always something. Check the events calendar. Destination Panama City is really the one we try to direct people to, just because it's hard when there's so many different sources of information on events.
Sure.
We have a newsletter we put out, an email newsletter, and really that's where we summarize the events and try to promote not just us, but whatever else is going on downtown. There's always something fun on the weekend, and which is great. come downtown, enjoy the downtown, swing by history class, grab a pint, get some food, and enjoy it.
Nice. Well, let's get back to the subject of beer and just the process and the thing that we love about consuming said product. When people think of a history class brewing company beer, what's the signature characteristic? I promise I can speak. What is the signature characteristic that you think people ought to know of? What's the first thing that ought to come to their mind when they think of your beer?
First thing that comes to mind, well, drinkability. That really, my goal is to make sure that whatever beer we're putting out there, and like you said, we try to cover the whole spectrum. Everybody has something that they can go to, and that's really the cool part for me. Is like we're always creating new recipes. So every time you come, there are different beers on. There'll be something for everybody, and then whenever a beer is gone, there's always somebody coming up to me going, you have to brew this one again. And it literally is pretty much every style you can imagine is somebody's favorite beer that we brew. So that, I think, that's the signature to what we're trying to do, right? Is we want to have that drinkability, whatever your drinkability style is. So that's kind of the key.
Were you the guy that came up with the Parker Hefeweizen?
Yeah, I mean, all the recipes are basically my recipes. We have a couple of marketing people that we run and brainstorm names. But yeah, definitely the Hefe recipe. That's me.
That was tasty stuff, man. I had seen one of your videos on Facebook, and for those who want to know more about history class, they really do a nice job on social media of putting up videos and just educational things about not only their beers but the inspiration behind where all this stuff comes from. So Parker is a little small town suburb of Panama City that's right here in Bay County, and that's what the Parker Hefeweizen is named for. Great beer though, really, really, really smooth drinking wheat beer, had a great flavor to it across the top. Also tried one of your, I guess it was the cream ales. I don't remember the specific name for it, but that one just had a really good smooth flavor too. Not terribly robust, but definitely had enough body to it to let you know it's there and let you think about it. So what are some of the top sellers around history class? If somebody's going to walk through the door on Friday night, I want to know what the people drink. What are the top sellers around your brewing company?
The blonde, the Bell Booth blonde. When it's on, that's our go-to for most people. It really is a super easy, clean, crisp beer that kind of meets the criteria of the beer gets out of the way and people can enjoy themselves. So it's not all about the beer all the time. But Bell Booth blonde. That's our number one.
Okay. Now, I could see that being very nice in summertime. When it's hot and it's sunny, I could see one of those coming off the ice really nice and being exactly what you want when it's 95 degrees outside and you're hanging out on the Gulf of Mexico. Talk to me about when the weather does finally get a little bit cooler. And that, believe it or not, folks, that does happen in North Florida particularly. We do get a week or two of winter weather when we put on flannel shirts and jeans. But when cooler weather is around, you got a favorite in that crowd, be it a stout or a porter or something else that you do?
Yeah, we do. I'm not a pumpkin beer fan.
Okay.
But what we do is when the weather cools down, we bring on the dark beers, and we have one. It's like an American strong ale. We call it the Sweet Tater, and we literally mash sweet potatoes, throw them in the boil, throw marshmallows in there, and it's like a sweet potato pie inspired strong ale. So that one's fun. People love. Of course, we've brewed it once because we've only been open a year and a half. But yeah, last year we threw the Sweet Tater down. People they loved it. So that one's fun.
Nice. Well, I did notice that you had a cider on tap. I think it was a black cherry something or another. Is that an area that you guys have started to kind of branch out into, the cidery space?
Yeah, we do. We keep a cider on, and it actually, percentage-wise, is our second best seller, just because it's always on. And so, yeah, we have a wine and cider license specifically just to brew that cider. So we got, a seltzer too is usually on.
Okay.
So everything from cider, seltzer, Milk stout's one of our mains, all the way through to those lighter beers that obviously is the main go-to in this part of the world, where the big macro light lagers are king. So people
Sure.
kind of, that's their gateway into craft beer, is those lighter beers.
Sure. Well, now, as the brewmaster, let me ask you this. Is there a notable difference in the process of creating a good craft beer versus a craft seltzer or craft cider? And as the guy who's now kind of dabbled a little bit in all three, do you have a favorite or maybe one that you like more than the others?
Well, I definitely I love making beer. And so, I make the cider and the seltzer because they're segments of the community that want it. So, beer is definitely king for me in making. The processes are, generally the same, meaning that you provide a nice, clean sugar source for yeast to, consume the sugars and produce alcohol and CO2. So it's really, the process is just getting that sugar water source, however you get it, whether it's from, malted barley or apple juice, or just cane sugar, which is how the seltzers come about. It's just a good, clean sugar source.
Cool. You mentioned your pumpkin, the sweet tater beer just a second ago, which that just sounds wild. Probably a little bit sweet for my liking, but my wife would probably really get into that. She's a big cider person too, so she was first on scene for your black cherry cider. What has been the riskiest beer recipe that you've tried? Have there been any real out there tricks that you've tried that maybe they landed great and really found a fan base, or maybe one or two that you got a little bit too out there on the lunatic fringe and it didn't stick?
Well, anything I think I'm getting on the lunatic fringe, people love it even more. So we do I don't do a pumpkin beer for October, but we do one. It's a really cool story about a shady character that was in St. Andrews in the I think it was the 1880s, and the locals called him Captain Blood. So we do a Captain Blood. It's a Cascadian Dark or Black IPA that's like 130 BUs, which is like a bittering reading. And so that I thought was going to just be over the top and not be that well received, but everybody seemed to love it. So
nice.
130 IBUs, I'm in.
Yeah.
But then I'm Mr.
That's right.
I'm Mr. Bitter Beer Man.
There you go. So we try to have something for everybody. And that one I really was like, as a home brewer, that style came around. It's been several years, but I enjoyed it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make it. I'm going to push the BUs as high as I can just to see who is going to like this beer. And it was a wide variety of people enjoyed the beer.
That's awesome. It's like
I'm your Huckleberry.
there's always going to be that guy in the crowd in North Carolina that wants to dive into the Carolina Reaper salsa just to say that he did it. So it's
Absolutely.
nice. It's nice to see that we can ratchet it up in the beer front and get a little crazy too.
Yep.
Let me ask you this: any thought to ever branching into the non-alcoholic space? It seems like that some of the the bigger vendors, the Anheuser-Busch's and the whatnot, are starting to play a little bit more in that area. For the longest time, if you were a non-alcoholic drinker, you wanted the taste of beer without the buzz. Basically, you had O'Doul's. That was it. It was horrible. But it seems like that space has started to kind of fill up with a little bit more activity in the last year or so. Any idea maybe of history class would ever tackle that space at all?
As a production, probably not. And it's really just from a technical perspective and equipment investment it would take to get the NAs going. But we do keep a variety of NA beers that are craft. There are a bunch of newer craft NA beers out there. And so we keep those on. Those, to me, that's fun because I totally respect somebody who wants the beer without the buzz for whatever reason. So we try to make sure that that's in house for them too. And I have fun just kind of, doing my market research and seeing what they taste like. And really, they're getting to the point where it's like they almost are like an alcoholic beer. So I think it's a cool space. We probably won't delve into that. We'll leave it to the pros and just get their products in house for people to
Well,
consume.
that's awesome, though, that at least people, when they come into History Class Brewing Company, can have the option, even if it's not native in house, that they too can come in, grab a pint of something that they like to drink, and sit down with a sandwich and kick it with family and friends. All of this started as we kind of start to wind down to the interview here. All of this started with your kind of love of beer and just wanting to learn how to do it. And it all started because your wife bought you a beer kit from JCPenney and you were off and running. There's a lot of other people out there who are like you and have that same ambition. What advice would you give to somebody who, A, maybe just wants to learn how to brew their own beer in a garage or, at home, and then B, for that second crowd that thinks, I kind of want to maybe do this as a business too? What would be your lines of advice that you would give to those two crowds?
I would say always make it fun, right? So if you want it to be a hobby, keep it fun. There are so many great resources out there for home brewing now where you can get kits. If you're comfortable with a kit, you can dabble into making your own recipes. There's software out there. It's really accessible. So, I think it's a great hobby. Obviously, that's where I started. And there's so many resources out there. And the best part is, throwing the party, having the friends over, sampling the beer, and it's amazing to see people's reaction when they realize you made the beer and it actually tastes like beer. It's really fun. So I would say dive into it and have fun with it.
Nice. And then last question I have, and I'm going to throw it out to the guys in case they had some stuff that they want to talk to you about. If you're sitting in an elevator with somebody that has never been to Panama City, much less History Class Brewing Company, but they just happen to mention in passing that, I think I'm going to go out and find myself a beer tonight. What's your 30-second pitch for History Glass Brewing Company? What is it that they need to know about you that would make them say, I'm going to go check that place out?
Well, because we're adjacent to the tourist, Panama City beach, I would say if you're looking for the authentic town, then you need to come downtown, come down to History Class, enjoy a great beverage and food, and bring your family and friends so they can enjoy it too.
Awesome. Rob and Kevin, I've monopolized this man's time enough for one night. Either one of you chuckleheads got a question for the man?
I do. I'm one of those that it's non-alcoholic for me. I gave it up in the 90s when it took a 12-pack for me just to get ready to go out. And so that's when I realized that's probably a little too much. But I do love the taste of beer. I love it with some hot wings. And it was O'Doul's for me forever, for the longest time. What is the best, if some of those craft beers are out there making non-alcoholic, what is the best you've tasted?
Right now we have a brand called Bravus out there, and they have everything from the blonde ale, which we always keep in, all the way to IPAs and stouts, and they really, I think they're nailing the flavors. It's as close to an alcoholic beer as I've tasted, so that's where we're sitting right now. And the beauty of it is because it is non-alcoholic, they can ship it straight to your house. So you can just order a sample pack from them. They'll ship it in the mail. If you get more than 12, it's free shipping. So come on.
How do you spell that?
Oh, yeah.
Bravus.
Yeah, I got a pen in hand.
Yeah, it's Bravus.
Where's that out of, by the way?
I think it's out of California.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah, that's going to be happening.
Yeah. So
I promise you.
Rob, how about you, man? You got a question for the man?
Yeah, I got a middle range question from the non-alcoholic to the normal alcohol levels. The beer of choice that I've gotten into of late is the Slightly Mighty from Dogfish Head, and also the Lagunitas Daytime, and both of those are intriguing to me. One, because they're low carb, and two, because I'm older and I don't drink. I can't drink as much as I used to. And they are low alcoholic. They tend to be 3% alcohol and 3, 4, 5 carbs. And of course, one of the reasons they get away with getting rid of the carbs is getting rid of the alcohol. Have you thought about something along those lines, or is that again something that's going to be a challenge for you to produce because of the nature of what you'd have to add onto your production process?
Just as a rule of thumb, I generally try to keep my ABVs lower because we are that family pub environment. But I have tackled that because I'm in that realm too. I'm sipping the Pilsner typically, trying to keep it under 5%. But yeah, we've done some session IPAs like that, and done the research and figured out what additions you have to do, maybe with a little bit of fruit or with some non-fermentable sugars to give you that fuller mouthfeel that you get from the alcohol. So yeah, we definitely, that realm to me is intriguing. So we definitely push that and pump out a few of those lighter ABVs, and try to, keep the hops and keep the mouthfeel in there.
Well, the specific point to emphasize, I guess, from my point of view, and I didn't phrase it well, is that it's low carb.
Yeah.
And as someone who is trying to do low carb, you have a beer and it's 30 carbs, and suddenly you've blown your entire diet. But you have, 4 or 5 of these, slightly mighties, and you're sitting at 15 carbs, and, that's plenty of beer for the evening for me these days. But I still haven't had the full carbs of a beer. So that's what I was sort of asking about, I guess.
Yeah, you can, I mean, I think Dogfish Head uses like monk fruit or some sweetener that keeps the calories down and keeps the carbs down. And so we've dabbled with that. The software I use in recipe creation, I actually have, a formulation that will give me whatever the carbs are and the calories. And so, you can tweak it and use different ingredients and definitely focus on shifting that down. So, yeah, it's definitely something I've toyed with because there definitely is a market there for that product. So.
Alrighty, Tim. Well, I think that's bringing us down to about the mid-hour point, which is halftime for us, and that's typically when we start to sign off with our guests. But we really do want to thank you again for coming by, man. History Class Brewing Company, folks, downtown Panama City. If you're in the area, I've been to a lot of microbrews and a lot of craft breweries over several states now, and this is definitely one of my favorites. It's not just because it's here in my own home country area. Just a great pub, great beer, great concept, great vibe. You even had great live music when I was in there last Friday. Just a good place to go hang out on a Friday night and enjoy yourself a good pint, and oftentimes support some great causes. So if you want to know more about them, they're obviously online at historyclass.beer. They also, as mentioned, do a lot of stuff on social media, Facebook, Instagram. They post videos. If you want to get to know them, get to know their staff, get to know their products, it's all online. So I highly encourage you to go check them out. Tim, any last parting shots for us before we let you go?
No, I don't think so. Just, look us up if you're ever in the Panhandle, and we'll hope to see you around.
Awesome. Tim Whaler, folks, History Class Brewing Company, downtown Panama City. Go check them out. All right, folks, that's going to bring us down to halftime of the show where we pay the bills to the good folks over at Chris Kennedy Publishing for being the title sponsor of this here the title sponsors of this here fine program. Chris Kennedy Publishing, message-free sci-fi with a slice of fantasy. At least I didn't step all over that. So we're heading back. We're heading back to the Four Horsemen universe with this week's new release in the form of Unshackled. This is book 9 in the Rise of the Peacemaker series from Casey Moores and Jamie Ibson. Brother Hal, what's the word on this book, man?
Hey, it's a Four Horsemen book. What more could you want?
True.
But since we're here, and since we owe Chris a little bit of time, let's talk about it. It's an unbreakable defense versus an unstoppable assault. Decades after Bull took control of the long-abandoned facility on the moon of Tambu, it has become a refuge, a weapons manufacturing facility, and a holding point for the company's varied assets. It has remained one of the company's closest held secrets. It's not a secret anymore. With the fleet overwhelmed, casualties piling higher and higher, and the defenders all but eradicated, the Science Guild believes they have free reign. The Guild is wrong. They didn't count on Rixanda Roxtador, a mostly retired Pushtal spy, a small cadre of living science experiments, a trio of fearless Flatar, and Lucille, the base's synthetic intelligence. Note to self, never mess with Lucille.
Truth.
These will hold the facility at all costs, or die fighting, and probably take you with them.
Sweet. Kevin, what are the people saying about Unshackled from Casey Moores and Jamie Ibson?
Well, Sean says the Science Guild is looking for something and it's not playing nice. This novel contains whirlwind battle scenes, a trio of crazy flatar, other familiar characters, and humor inserted throughout the story. The book almost reads like a Buff Orpington movie. If you have no idea who Buff Orpington is, you will by the end of this novel. A Kindle customer says, our favorite synthetic intelligence, Lucille, is at it again up against the Evil Science Guild and their cyber zombies. We also get unlikely heroes, literally Alvin and the Chipmunks, Flatar, who want to be TV dinners. Also, who needs James Bond when you have Buff Orpington and his bevy of beauties? This is a fast-paced, fun-packed 4HU story, which is a real page-turner. So put on your aluminum foil helmet, holster your customized XT-12 pistol, and crawl into your assigned silo so you can binge read this one. Another Kindle customer says the best laid plans of mice, men, and bulls go awry. An unlikely group of defenders take on the Science Guild, who is playing by none of the rules. Action-packed from start to finish. I can't wait for the next series.
So I just have to say, with the best laid plans of mice and bulls gang off a glay. Now I want Robbie Burns to write a 4HU novel. Sadly, that's unlikely to happen, but that would be fun.
Nice. I'd be remiss, by the way, if I didn't add this stuff that Casey and them are doing with the whole Buff Orpington thing. Dude, the retro-looking poster stuff that they got going on, that crap is hilarious, man. It's really funny. If you're not following Casey and Jamie on social media, make sure you do that because they've got some fun stuff happening with there. All right, pre-releases. We do have those going on as we are wont to do. This week we are looking at Valkyrie's Daughter. This is book 3 in the Lunar Free State series by John E. Sears. If you haven't checked this one out yet, folks, you're really going to want to get on it. A lot of people are talking about it. One reader even says perhaps the age of Grandmasters hasn't passed. So big words there. And again, that is Valkyrie's Daughter from John Sears. You can find that exclusively at chriskennedypublishing.com this week, and then it will go live to the rest of the world this upcoming Friday. New in audio, we got a doubleheader this week. First up, it is Operation Redeal by Tim C. Taylor. That is book 2 of Tim's Chimera Company series, which is supposedly really cool. The other new audio out this week is The Island of Dr. Leroux from Chris Kennedy, and that is from the Fallen World universe. A lot of stuff really starting to ratchet up over there in Fallen World these days. It's going to be a big fall for that universe. So for fans of that, stay tuned because there's a lot of good stuff getting ready to come at you, not the least of which is The Island of Dr. Leroux by Chris Kennedy in audio, and that is coming available here in the next week or so. Finally, in other news, launch team readers are needed for not one but 2 new books in the Salvage title universe. The first would be It Takes More Kinds, which is the second new anthology from Salvage, and then the second book will be A Nest of Stars by Matt Novotny, and that is a brand new novel set in Salvage title. So if you're a Salvage fan, you want to get some early peeks at some new reads and do it on the free, then go to chriskennedypublishing.com, shoot them a message via the contact form, and let them know that you're interested in becoming a launch team reader for those 2 particular books. So, okay, well, that's going to bring us down to our open segment where we just kind of bring readers and people up to speed on what's going on with us these days. Rob, I'm actually going to start with you, man, because as you noted at the top, the new era of New Mythology Press, it begins in earnest. By the time this podcast drops, Talons and Talismans will be out and available to the masses. Again, if you just check the show notes for this podcast, you'll see the hyperlink right there. Go get it. Big stuff happening at New Mythology Press, man. What do they have to look forward to on the radar here?
Well, as you say, Talons and Talismans will be released by the time you hear this. That's the first of 2. The second one will come out, should be out on the 2nd of November. And it includes another 15 great stories. I got so many great stories submitted for this anthology that I literally had to make it 2 because I couldn't choose from all the fantastic stories, especially fantastic stories from new authors in the open submission. Really a great collection of stuff. It's an honor to be able to put forth some of these people's first time ever stuff. 2 weeks from now is The House Between Worlds by John R. Osborne, and this is the next in the Milesian Accord series. Now, John did a trilogy in the Milesian Accords that's a full arc. And then since then, he's done several Milesian Accord stories within the anthologies that we've done in Songs of Valor and Talons and Talismans that's coming out tomorrow or out already for you who are listening to this and so on and so forth. But he's starting a new add-on series building off of what he did in the original trilogy, and this is the first in that. And when you edit a novel, sometimes you go through and you're like, okay, well, I have to go edit this novel. It's the job. And sometimes you look up and you're 5 chapters past your goal of an editing because you've gotten so wrapped into the story and it's so good that you can't put it down even as the editor. And that's exactly what happened to me with The House Between Worlds. It's an amazing story. I love the characters. I liked the Milesian Accords before doing any kind of editing work with John, but this is some of his best stuff. We all get better, and John, we always get better if we work at the craft, and John has been working at the craft, and this is impressive stuff. So in 2 weeks, The House Between Worlds, and if you've liked the Milesian Accords, you're going to love it, and if you haven't, this is definitely a series you want to get into.
Awesome. Kevin, what's going on with you these days, man?
I'll let you guys know earlier, but I just got back from Nashville today, where I was there for a couple days.
Oh, that's right. The big movie premiere party, hanging out backstage with all the popular people.
Yeah, it was a big after party for the movie Old Henry. And you know what? There's something I need to say. I mean, I know I'm 5'6". I'm short. Okay, I'm a short guy. Whatever. But actors, like most actors, are like huge, 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", and I'm like, holy crap! Now Tim Blake, he's the main guy. He's not a real tall guy, but some of those cowboys in the movie and some of those guys, Trace Atkins, he's like 6'5", plus he wears boots, and holy crap! I mean, is that I thought ball players were big, but actors, 6'4", 6'5" is just average.
I mean, there's plenty of Micronian actors, to borrow an old Robotech line. I mean, look at Tom Cruise; he's a midget. Dustin Hoffman? He's a wee little man. They're out there.
But I mean, the guy that plays Thor these days, he's what, 6'4"? It's just like,
sure,
wow,
Yeah, but I mean, Downey's not that big. I mean, what is Downey, like 5'9", 5'8", 5'9"?
Yeah, he's not. But a lot of and I guess a lot of the country music stars that were there, because there were a lot. Colt Ford was there, and Craig Campbell was there. There was a lot of people. Who's Who in Nashville was at this event last night.
Was Stephen Dorff there? He's in that film, right?
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. They were all there.
Okay.
Even the young man who played, he's like 14 years old. That dude is almost 6 foot tall, and I'm like, what? Come on.
All right. How tall is my man Stephen Dorff? For those who don't know who Stephen Dorff is, if you go back to the late 90s and watch the first Blade film with Wesley Snipes, Stephen Dorff was the villain, Deacon Frost.
Well, everybody's taller than me. I'm only 5'6", so it's hard. Everybody's tall. Right?
I gotcha.
But now Trace Atkins is a big dude, and I've seen him before last night. I've seen him in other times, and he's just a big guy. I mean, that's just a big dude.
Yeah, he a big boy, no doubt.
And the other thing I want to notice is a lot of the ladies on their arms, they're all 5'11", 6 foot. They're just I guess that's just a Hollywood thing. I don't know, models, whatever. So, but anyhow, it was a good time, and I found out a little bit about the Salvage movie coming up. All the drafts are done on the script, and they're fine tuning the final script, so that is happening, and so things are progressing. And the CEO of the production company is he's pleased with it. So
nice. Any timetable on when they're going to start casting for that?
No, it's a lot of things. Hollywood and filming everywhere, just filming in general, has to slow down because of the COVID protocols and everything involved with that. So, and I knew when the deal was signed that it could be a couple years before things really get kicking, and it's only been 1 year, so it's there's no stress there. But as in the words of the CEO, a movie is happening.
Cool. Can't go wrong with that. Well, other stuff on the horizon coming up here in the next little bit. The Street Survivors. So that would be my first collaboration with Chris Kennedy in the Four Horsemen universe. Came out this past May. Finally arrives in audio. So really excited about that. That's going to be coming to Audible, iTunes, etc., on October 19th. So 4HU fans, ready for your next dose of Taylor Van Zant and Swamp Eagle Security and Company. You can get that on October 19th. Right about the same time that, if I'm not mistaken, both of you fellas are going to be rolling up to the Outer Banks in North Carolina to do Factory Con. So you guys excited to hit the road for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be a break for me, and I don't know. I'll do a little bit of writing, a little bit of work, but I'm actually going to use it as a vacation.
Cool. Rob, how about you, man? What do you got on tap for Factory Con?
Well, I'm going to do a bunch of vacation type stuff too, but to be honest, I really enjoy sitting in vacation type spots and writing, and I'll be talking about a whole bunch of things. the Eldritch Legacy project. Going to be trying to recruit people to write for that anthology and to join that world. And I've got a bunch of writing I want to do. I'm about 10,000 words into my next novel, which I'm aiming to get to myself as the editor by the end of December, and I'm trying to be ahead of the game, which is rare for me, as you know, writers aren't always ahead of the game when it comes to deadlines. So for me, while this is going to be a lot of fun sitting around talking and enjoying myself with my friends, I'm going to go early and I'm going to stay late, in part because I'm going to take some of that peaceful time during the day and chunk out words, because it's a neat way to, it's a different viewpoint. Sometimes a different viewpoint for me tends to more creative time. So for me, It's not just a vacation. It's a chance to go work in a different place.
Sweet. Yeah, I really regret that I've got to bail on that. I had originally planned to do Factory Con, but whenever it all kind of came to pass that we were actually going to move from North Carolina to Florida, I had to burn up the last of my PTO time at work to be able to facilitate the move. So if I'm going to have anything left for the holidays, for family and all of that, I'm pretty skimpy on what I can do in terms of taking time off. So unfortunately, Factory Con didn't make it onto my schedule this year. However, you can rest assured it will join Liberty Con and Fantasy on my schedule for next year. So really excited about that. Factory Con is one of those cons where, as writers, not only is it just a super casual spot for us to be able to hang out with readers and engage with fans, but it's also a great time for us as writers to be able to hook up and collaborate. And there's a lot of story ideas that are born out of those conversations, guys. I mean, more than you could probably fathom, actually. It's kind of the same way around the bar at a convention. I mean, once we're all off the clock and we're not selling books anymore, we're just hanging out as peers and colleagues, shooting a breeze. There's a lot of magic happens in those time slots. So anytime you can get on site to take advantage of that and be a part of that, good things happen, man. So, alrighty, well, I think it's time we start to hear what our listeners have got to say for us this week. So let's roll into some pod mail.
You got mail.
All right. Pod mail questions. First question comes to us from Mike. I'm fairly certain that I experienced all 5 stages of grief once upon seeing Ian's tweet that Michael J. Straczynski is rebooting Babylon 5 with the CW. I will only take solace in the fact that knowing that JMS is in this project. For that reason, I will give it a chance when it comes out, but I'm not holding my breath. What do you guys think about the B5 reboot on the CW? Either of you guys B5 fans back in the day? I am, but I want to give you guys first crack.
I am. I actually not back in the day, not too long ago. I think the first time I saw it was 2013 or so.
Okay.
And I've seen it all the way through twice, and I really enjoyed a lot of, especially the second, third, and fourth series were really top notch to me. First one got a little bit slow. The fifth one had some weird stuff in it that didn't necessarily work for me. But the early stuff, especially once they sort of got in the flow, was really strong writing, really powerful characters, and I liked it quite a bit. So, you know, it's enough of a thing to me that I'm going to check it out. But I don't ever check these things out first. You know, like I said, I got to it in 2012. That's not hyperbole.
Right.
I tend, like, I haven't even watched the new Battlestar Galactica all the way through. I've seen like an episode here and there. I just don't get into things until I get into things, and then I'll binge watch it. So I'll give it a shot, but I don't know when. It probably won't be immediate.
Kevin, how about you, man? Were you ever a B5 guy?
I was, and like Rob, I tend to wait till things are either over or there's just a bunch of it for me to take a look at. It was killing me with The Mandalorian having to wait every week for the next episode. And in hindsight, I should have just waited till it was all done. So I
just stay off of social media.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't mind that so much. Yeah, I don't mind so much of that. It's just when I watch it, I want to watch it. So which is why in my fantasy series, I can't be mad that everybody's waiting for the third book before I can really market the thing. They want it all at once. I understand that. So
fair enough. Well, yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat with Rob and with Mike. I mean, JMS is behind it. So, and from, by all rights, I want to say shout out to Mia Cleve, one of our editors, for posting his kind of official statement on this on social media. He was very clear that, listen, the CW loves this show, and they are giving me carte blanche to do whatever I want with it that I want. They are not pressuring me. They are not forcing me to make this anything other than what I believe the vision for this show ought to be. And I've learned a lot about storytelling since I wrote Babylon 5. The world around us has changed, and I think now's a great time to do this, and they're giving me a blank slate to do it. So, I mean, as a creator, you certainly can't argue with that. And as long as that's the case, then I'll give it a shot. Because for my money, and I'm with Rob, I didn't get into Babylon 5 back in the days when it launched, when it was on TNT. I remember seeing the ads for it, but I didn't watch it. My wife got me turned on to it way down the line. And once I kind of slugged past season 1 and really got into it, oh man, great writing. And for a lot of the same reasons that I think Breaking Bad was a great series, and that is that when the creator set out to make it, he knew his story. He knew the beginning, he knew the middle, he knew the end, and there was not going to be any more. And I think if they take that same formula with this, then okay, CW or not, I get it. You kind of raise an eyebrow at the CW. We all know what that network is and what they're about. Storytelling, not first among their priorities over really pretty young people. But hey, if they're going to give JMS carte blanche to make this what he wants, then I will certainly give it a shot. I'm just not holding my breath. But I never hold my breath on reboots because I know what makes them great. And I'll go back and watch that if I want greatness. So just don't screw it up. That's all I ask, guys. Next question comes to us from Steven. Not sure what the weather is like where you guys are, but up here in western North Carolina, temps are finally starting to drop a little bit, and autumn is here. What are some of your favorite things to cook for the fall season? Speaking as a guy who's in desperate need of some new menu ideas. Thanks. Let's see here. I love cooking with deer meat when deer season rolls around. I got plenty of friends who are hunters, and they load my deep freezer up. And I love making venison stew. I also use venison in chili. I've got a really simple chili recipe that I can throw together in a crock pot that everybody in our house really loves. So those are probably my go-tos and for fall weather food. I love that hearty type of cuisine. Potatoes, meat, vegetables. You can't freaking go wrong with that. So, but yeah, venison stew and chili are kind of my go-tos. Kevin, what do you're food man? You foodie man? What do you like to cook during the fall?
My wife just makes a really killer chili, and so when the cooler weather comes around, she does that for us. It's got to where now she has to make 2 big old pots so we can freeze one. We never have any leftovers to freeze, and so she does that. I like deer too. I was going to mention you got friends that hunt deer.
Yeah.
Here's a little secret. If you call your local processor and say, hey, did anybody not pick up a deer? I'd like to buy some deer meat. About 90% of the time, you're going to get a yes, come pick it up. Now, I'm not saying somebody actually didn't pick up their deer or couldn't afford it. Or I'm not saying that your local processor skims a pound here, 5 pounds there. I don't know. All I'm telling you is, even if you don't hunt, you can call a deer processor and ask, and they'll sell you meat. Yeah. Just throwing that out there for the fans.
Yep. And it's lean and it's good. Like it doesn't get any more organic than when it came out of the woods. And venison is super lean. Now, if you're going to make hamburgers with it, you got to mix it with something. Otherwise, they're pretty bone dry. But
the recipe is 3/4 deer, 1/4 Boston butt for ground beef.
Okay, all right.
For ground deer meat.
See, I'm easier than that, dude. I just go to the supermarket and buy the cheapest, like 80% ground beef I can find. That's super fatty, and then mix that in with a pound of that with a pound of ground venison, and I can patty out a good 6 or 7 burgers that makes everybody around here happy. Rob, you probably get more cold weather than either of us, man. What are you cooking when the temperatures start to drop?
Well, chili's certainly one of them. I love playing around with chili recipes and new spice mixes and all that sort of a thing. Stews. Basically, about this time of year, the crock pot comes out, and it's almost never, a week that the crock pot doesn't get used. And we got an Instapot this year, so we'll probably, we of course got the R2D2 Instapot, by the way.
Nice.
Had to get that one. And don't tell my stepmother, we got her a special Instapot too for Christmas. But not stepmother, mother-in-law, excuse me. Any case, I love crockpot meals, and I'm never quite sure what's going to happen. Because for me, crockpot, the joy of a crockpot is I got meat, I got various things sitting in the house that need to get cooked. Well, let's see what happens if I do this. And since I have spices from across the world, I will oftentimes try weird spice mixes. Like for example, I may make a chili recipe in terms of having all the things that I put into it, except I may do a completely different spice. Like I may do Indian garam masala spice instead and go with that kind of spicy and hot as opposed to the normal, Mexican pepper mix. And so a lot of times my cooking style, especially when it comes to crockpot, is very much like Tom Hanks in Bachelor Party. I don't know if you remember that, but he has this great scene where he's cooking and he's like, "What's the spice of the day?" And he rummages through his spice cabinet and he goes, "Paprika, paprika, the spice of the day." And that's pretty much my cooking style in a nutshell. But it's fun and it works out, generally speaking, because I do kind of know what goes well with what flavors. So.
Sure, that's the fun about experimenting in the kitchen, man, and particularly with stuff like this is, you can ruin it if you really want to try, but, some pots are going to come out better than others, but it's never really going to be horrible as long as you're kind of in the same genre, so to speak. And the only way you learn that is by getting in the kitchen and throwing some pots and pans around and not being afraid to ruin something on occasion and learn.
Paprika!
Paprika! Hashtag paprika. It's going to be a thing. All right. Next question comes to us from Shelly. Hey, guys. Greetings from Stafford Springs, Connecticut. I've been a Pats fan all of my life, so naturally it was a little strange last night to see the GOAT himself, Tom Brady, come trotting out into Gillette Stadium wearing a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform. What did you guys think of the great return to New England for Mr. Brady? And did you have any feelings about the game? Admittedly, I only caught the second half. Natalie and I finally got the opportunity to dial into The Many Saints of Newark, which is the Soprano prequel film. It's out in theaters and it's on HBO Max. Not a bad watch, by the way. Not the greatest mob film you're ever going to see, but if you were a fan of The Sopranos, I didn't think it was going to be this connected to the show with the story that they told. But it is. It does not play around. Right down to the voiceover from Michael Imperioli, who played Christopher Moltisanti on The Sopranos. If you were a Sopranos fan, this definitely gives you more meat more meat and potatoes from that world. So check it out. But I did catch the second half of the game. It was a typical grinder. It wasn't terribly sexy. You got field goals galore. Brady wasn't particularly spectacular, but as Rob and I and all of us were talking about off air, a lot of injuries to go around right now on Tampa Bay. So if they look a little rugged or rough around the edges, I think there is some reason for why that is. But, listen, obviously a lot of people tuned in. I read a news story today that it is the second most watched Sunday Night Football of all time for NBC Sports. So naturally they cashed in. And listen, it was neat. Tom Brady he's one of those players that whether you love him or hate him, he's one of the guys you got to see. Right up there with, in my generation, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, Tiger Woods, Dale Earnhardt, Jimmy Johnson, Chipper Jones, Greg Maddux. He's one of those generational players that you tell your kids, I saw him play, and he was every bit as great as the legends say he was. So, Rob, you're pretty well Mr. Professor on the NFL front, man. What was your take on the big Tom Brady return to New England?
Well, Tom Brady, much as I hate to admit it, he is the GOAT. You can't really argue it at this point in time. Maybe somebody will come along and break all his records, but that's not entirely likely. You got to admire what he did in New England, even if you don't like it. And I'll admit, I rooted for him in one Super Bowl. That would be the first one where he was the underdog against the Rams. And I was like, I always tend to root for the underdog in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Well, would I have rooted for him in that Super Bowl if it had led to, 89 more championships or however many? 6, I know. But you got to appreciate players in the NFL. First of all, they play their hearts out. Even if they play a game or 20 years or whatever, they play their hearts out. And honestly, the challenges that they go through playing the game for a long time and what they have to live up to at the end and during their career in terms of, the scrutiny that's upon them. I admire NFL players in general, and for someone to play that long at one place, I did want to see. I didn't care about the game. I have no real rooting interest in either Tampa Bay or New England right now. I actually am one of those people who don't think Tampa Bay is going to be there at the end, because I do think they face a challenge of being old. As a team, they're fairly old, and the longer a season goes, the more likely older teams are going to suffer injury attrition. So I think in the long term, I think the Buccaneers are going to fade, especially in the 17-game season. But I thought it was cool that this guy, who has played his heart out for a franchise, got a chance to say goodbye, and say goodbye in a sort of a proper way. I was there watching Emmett when he played for Arizona, and I watched, Jerry Rice play for the Raiders, and so on down the line. And those players, Brett Favre, for example, those players should be recognized for the teams that they poured their heart out for over a decade, and it should be appreciated. And I think it's great that they appreciated him, and then the game started, and they went, screw that, we're rooting for our team. We'll cheer for you again after the game, but right now, get him.
You're the
sack
enemy.
him. Hit him hard. Yep. I loved it.
All right. Kevin, how about you, man? Did you tune in?
Just like the CEO, he and I were both taking sneak peeks at the TV, and we'd walk away from everything to go look at it, because it was a big bar type venue where they had that event last night. So Shannon and I were both sneaking peeks at the game. He's a huge Tampa fan, so he was thrilled. But I watched some of it, probably when I should have been socializing. But as a writer, sometimes I'd just rather be by myself. But yes, I did see some of the game. It was the defensive game. Like you said, field goals everywhere. Brady hit about 50% of his passes, and injuries could have been the problem there. I don't know. So I don't know. I was still bummed because my Falcons lost. The quarterback doesn't throw any interceptions. They scored 3 touchdowns. 30 points. You score 30 points in the NFL, you're supposed to win the game, especially if you don't have any turnovers.
Right.
No turnovers and 30 points, you should win the game.
Yeah. Well,
especially when you're playing the team formerly known by that other name. You should always beat that team. I might be biased.
It just drives me crazy. How do you make no mistakes on offense, score 30 points, and not win the game? It's the dang defense. And people talking about, it's Matt Ryan. No, it's not Matt Ryan. No.
Right.
No, it was not.
Well, let's face it, guys. I mean, you say that about you should be able to score 30 points and win a game, but the NFL in 2021, man, it is an offensive-driven league. That's what they want. That's why I have so much respect for the kind of numbers that somebody like a Dan Marino could put up. I mean, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Can you fathom what a guy with his skill set and that release would do in today's NFL, where they're pretty much not even allowed to freaking hit you?
Oh my God. Well,
it's ridiculous. So 30 points is not what it used to be in the NFL game.
Right. You're right. Well, look at Terry Bradshaw. What has he got? 4 rings? Terry Bradshaw?
Yep.
In a time when they couldn't talk to him in his helmet.
Yeah.
When he couldn't slide and not get touched. Mm-hmm. When they didn't have the targeting rules. You know what I mean? And Terry got 4. Come on. Who really is the GOAT when you look at the eras and what could be done to a quarterback? Who really is the GOAT?
Well, the longevity of Brady is I think, what answers that question. Because the NFL in 2021 was not what the NFL was in 2001, in 2000. So it has changed.
But if Brady played in the 70s when you couldn't slide and when you would get hit, would he still have played this many years?
Maybe. He might not have played till he was 45, but he's still winning 3, 4, 5 Super Bowls.
Right.
He is that good.
I just think 4 rings in that era when the quarterbacks just got beat to hell and back, that is really, to me, impressive.
I'll tell you a guy who I always loved, and I shudder to think what he would do in today's NFL, is Randall Cunningham.
Oh my God.
I mean, I used to love watching. I almost bought an Eagles hat the last time I was down in Tallahassee. The hat shop there in the mall had kind of this retro line of all the old stuff. And they had the old Philadelphia Eagles. It was the lighter color green rather than the hunter green that they have now, with the old, full spread eagle logo on the front. Like, good looking hat. But I ended up skipping out on it because I'm not an Eagles fan. But I used to love to watch Randall Cunningham play ball, man. He was so much fun, and he played at a time when the quarterback went out and got out in the open like that, they would stick it to him, and he still put up figures.
I give you two players who get forgotten because they played prior to the Super Bowl era. First of all, the best wide receiver in NFL history is Jerry Rice. The second best is Don Hutson. Go look at the statistics he put up in an era when they didn't have that much passing. He basically invented the wide receiver as we know it today. He invented it. Some of his statistics, some of his records didn't get broken until in the last decade or so. They're that impressive.
Sure.
He had like 21 TDs one season in like 12 games. Crazy numbers. The second player that I think gets overlooked as one of the greatest, and I would have argued for him in a number of instances prior to Brady getting his sixth with Tampa Bay, and that's Otto Graham. The Cleveland Browns of the 1950s were an incredibly dominant team, and part of that was because Otto Graham was so efficient, and efficient in the standard of a quarterback, almost by today's standards. It's not. You look at the stats and you look at what he was trying to do. But prior to the West Coast offense, a lot of the efficiency challenges or the efficiency skills of what quarterbacks do today, they weren't there. And Graham had a bunch of those things. And if you go back and look at his average net yards per attempt, which is actually a fairly clean stat that you can compare quarterbacks from era to era, he is outstanding. And I wish people had any real idea of how good Otto Graham was. And Don Hutson, he gets forgotten because people remember T.O. and they remember Randy Moss and they see all these great stats. But in comparison to their era, it lights out stuff, honestly, from those two players.
Nice. Right. And that is why I call him the NFL professor, ladies and gentlemen.
One more thing I want to bring up about Bradshaw, because just to bring this up. Every game you see, everybody's watched it. You all watch football nowadays. In between, when the defense is on the field, the quarterback's flipping through a computer, looking at the plays, looking where players were, looking where the defensive player. Bradshaw didn't have any of that. He didn't even have the pieces of paper faxed down that they had in the late 80s and 90s. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there.
A lot of great quarterbacks from that era. Would have been interesting to see, what they do in today. Whether it's Bradshaw, whether it's Staubach, whether it's Johnny U. I mean, listen, there were some great players. It's fun stuff to talk about, fun debates to have. But that is actually going to bring us down to the hour, folks. So let's kick us a little bit of White Flag.
White Flag.
White Flag is, of course, that segment where we tell readers and listeners kind of what's going on with us in the next couple of weeks and things that we're looking forward to. In my case, NASCAR playoffs are in full swing. The round of 12 is on right now. That's going to come to close at Charlotte this upcoming weekend at the Roval, which is always an interesting race. We had a rain-delayed race. It finished, half of it anyway, finished today at Talladega, got called for weather, and Bubba Wallace was your winner today. So NASCAR will officially get more publicity on mainstream sports media this week than they even got for the Daytona 500 on account of that win because it is historic. Always good racing at Talladega. It was really fast and furious down the stretch. And props to the 23 team for being able to grit it out and get up there and be in position to take that win at the end of the race when the caution flag finally came out for rain. So kudos to them. Kudos to that whole crew. Other stuff that I'm looking forward to, believe it or not, I kind of want to go see the new James Bond film. This is the last one for Roger Craig. I can remember when the blonde Bond was cast, how much we all hated the thought of it, and we pissed and bemoaned, and it's horrible. And then we went to go see Casino Royale and found out just how awesome of a freaking Bond he was, and we were off to the races. So the Daniel Craig era of James Bond does come to a close with this film. From all the early reviews I'm reading, it is a pretty good one. And, at the end of the day, folks, I miss going to a movie theater. It's been, 2 years now? And I'm ready to go to a movie. So I think it's time to go catch a Bond flick with the kiddo and have some good times. So, Kevin, what's going on with you in the next week or two, man? What are you looking forward to?
Well, and I've mentioned it throughout the year, but I'm looking forward to the playoffs. My Braves made the playoffs. And listen, they stepped in pretty dominant the last part of the year. In second place behind them was the Phillies. and they just swept the Phillies and just went ahead and knocked that right on out.
Got a
And
whole
just
bunch
got
of
rid that
people
whole-
fired.
Oh yeah,
Got a whole bunch of people in Philadelphia fired.
You know, it was a 2.5 game difference. Playing Phillies, it's 3 games. Oh my God, what's going to happen? And the Braves just swept right on through all 3 games.
You better watch your 6 on the Cardinals, man. That club is
yeah.
coming, and they are coming fast. They
Right,
are
well,
they are in
yeah.
full swing.
Well, like I said, it depends on when you get hot. You know, there are teams that make the baseball playoffs, make the playoffs because they were hot in July or June, and they got 8 games up, 9 games up, and then they fade at the end of the year, but yet they still go ahead and win it. The Braves are up now, so that's good. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Rob, how about you, man? What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the playoffs too, but I'm not. And this is going to irritate some of my close friends who are big Cardinals fans, because of course I live in Cardinals country more so than I live in any other baseball team. I don't think the Cardinals are going to do very well. I think one of the things that happens with teams like what happened to the Cardinals this year is that they get into it. They push themselves so hard to manage to get to the wild card, and they're going to be playing the Dodgers. And let me tell you, the Dodgers are one of the all-time teams. And, it's possible. Any team can win in a single game in baseball. Baseball's like that. But honestly, the quality of the Cardinals compared to the quality of the Dodgers this year, and let's assume they do win, then they're going to be playing. At some point somebody's going to have to beat the Giants, and the Giants were good, really good this year. They weren't a fluke. You look at their statistics all the way through, and I'm talking some of the advanced statistical stuff. They did some amazing things this year, except they just didn't have any big names and nobody expected it. And that's going to be a heck of a team to knock out. So we'll see. But I don't actually think the Cardinals are going to do well. The Braves have a puncher's chance, but still going to go through the West for me because honestly the Dodgers and the Giants are a step ahead of every team right now.
There you go. All righty.
Yeah, I think Rob had a good point there. Any given time anybody could win because the best team out there, if their ace develops a blister and can't pitch, makes a big difference. A rolled ankle with your guy batting .320. There you go.
Yep.
So.
All righty, folks. Well, thanks again to Tim Whaler for coming on the program tonight. History Class Brewing Company, folks, downtown Panama City. They got some good stuff happening down there. So if you're in the area, slide by, check them out, grab a pint, grab a sandwich, hang out, and enjoy the vibe of the place because it does awesome stuff there. Historyclass.beer if you want to check them out online. They're also on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks to Chris Kennedy Publishing, as always, for sponsoring this show. If you want to know more about them, it's online at chriskennedypublishing.com. Everything from the Four Horsemen universe to all the fabulous stuff that's happening now with New Mythology Press. It is all again at chriskennedypublishing.com because they are message-free sci-fi with a slice of fantasy. We always say it at the end of every show, if you love this program, leave us some stars, man. Whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. If they'll let you leave some stars, that helps to get us up in the rankings and let other people find the show, and we just greatly appreciate the love. So on behalf of Rob, on behalf of Kevin and myself, thanks as always for listening to the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. We will see you next time. See you.